Shall we for a quick second? I'll take the first hand that's up.
Is this the palm card?
The palm card.
Oh, let me see.
All I could find was one. The big one. The palm card is the big one.
But not this one.
This one here.
Not the business card, palm card.
This.
One typo. You see, this is my way of addressing that, so that later, you don't say, you know, there's a typo on here. That's really what I'm doing. I love that you can't find it that quickly.
I think it's good.
Yes. District, yes. Sir, the only thing I have for you is a fedora, because everything else there is for women. In any case, okay. So let me just start by introducing myself, give you a little bit of background. I think people want to know the people that they might be voting for. So I am a mom of 3. They are all adults. I have 8 grandchildren. They range from 11 years old to 24 years old. I know. What can I say? And most of them are conservatives. I'm a conservative Christian who identifies as a Republican. And the reason that I say that is because it wouldn't be true if I didn't say that I wasn't disappointed in the Republican Party. I was a special education teacher, then I became a special education administrator, and then I became an assistant superintendent, and I ran school districts for a living with the superintendent. I oversaw the human resource department. My budget alone was $170 million. The budget itself was about $278 million, but as you know, most of that falls into personnel and medical and workers' comp and unemployment. So the part that I oversaw was about $170 million. I did all the hiring, I did all the firing, and I was also a chief negotiator for those 8 years. In the district that I worked in, there were 12 collective bargaining units. And these were powerful unions. And I settled 14 contracts in 3 years. And that's called relationships, because they were taking hard zeros and soft zeros because the district honestly didn't have the money to make it budget to budget. I'm letting you know this because I worked for boards of education, and because I did, I know how school districts work. I understand that everything pertains to law, state law, and then labor law, and then that translates into board policy. So when I'm attending these school board meetings, I know exactly what's going on, just the same way if whatever businesses you're in, if you walked in, you would know exactly what it is that's going on. I've been here for 7 years now. I was in Collier County first for 5 years, and the last 2 years I have been living in Lee County. I do live here in Bonita. I've always been politically astute, and I've always prided myself on the fact that I research and never give anybody fake information or false information. I don't like that. The type of person that will sit and watch every single Senate hearing or dig, if somebody says something, I'll say, well, I need to fact check that, because I don't like to spread false rumors. To me, it's very important what's going on. And that's something that I've prided myself on. So after January 6th of 2020, I was upset, like a lot of people were upset. And I said to myself, I had retired, and I said to myself, I can sit here and do nothing, or I can get up off and start to do something about it. So at that time, I started a website. The website is called Take Action Patriots. I started a newsletter. I started putting a newsletter out every single week. I met Adele Amico, president of the Estero Republic Club. I wanted her to look at my website and critique it for me. And that's when she roped me in as her vice president of the club. And I started attending all of the school board meetings in Lee County. Now, when I was living in Collier County, I really did hear, if you think Collier's bad, you should see Lee. Okay, that is exactly what I heard. So this school board can have 3 different types of meetings: workshop meetings, briefing meetings, and action meetings. And if you look at their schedule, they will literally leave at least 3 hours for each meeting, but they usually run into 4. And a lot of times they will have 2 meetings a day. So if they have a workshop meeting followed by a briefing meeting followed by an action meeting, I'm literally gone from the house for over 9 hours during the day. And sometimes 12, to be honest. When I started attending the school board meetings, it didn't take me that long, and it became very clear to me a lot of the things that were happening, and they weren't good. One of my first meetings, they were talking about the code of conduct. The code of conduct is something that goes home to the parents every single year. They have to sign off on it, that they've read it, and that the children have read it, and basically it outlines all the do's and don'ts. Well, there was a page in that code of conduct, and that page was all about LGBTQ. But here's the troubling part. It said things like, you are to eliminate the pronouns he and she. They were training the teachers and the students how to use words like kiddos, because you were no longer allowed to use he and she. Boys were allowed in girls' bathrooms. Boys were allowed on girls' sports teams. So let me just back up and say this. As I started to attend the meetings, there were other people that were attending them as well. And to this day, we have actually formed a group, and we take action on a lot of stuff. And we've made really, really great strides. Like, for example, that page is not in the code of conduct any longer. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not happening in the schools, right? It just simply means it's not in the code of conduct. But you know, we have a great governor.
Amen.
Yes, he's got to get back in. And I had been volunteering for an organization called the Florida Citizens Alliance. Has anybody ever heard of that organization? Okay, well, it's a phenomenal organization. They've been around about a decade, and they focus strictly on K-12 education, only they'll go to Tallahassee and actually help get legislation passed. So one of the things that that Tallahassee was working on last year was something called the Parents' Rights Bill. And basically the Parents' Rights Bill, in a nutshell, said the school has no right to teach morality. So they have no right to desensitize children in terms of sexuality, making them more accustomed to hearing things. They had no right to anything that went against a parent's belief. The school district had no right to. Another thing that Governor DeSantis signed into law was that there could be no critical race theory. We can talk about that. He also signed into law that boys were not allowed to participate on girls' sports teams. It was called the Equity in Education Act. And the last one that was really, really important last year was the school district could not ask children if they had been vaccinated in order to enroll them in school. So whether one agrees with any of that, like what you may say, no, I want to be vaccinated, but the point is that it's not the incumbent upon the school to say that you have to be in order for you to attend, okay? So we were hounding the school board, and we were telling them that we wanted them to put the Parents' Rights Bill front and center in the Code of Conduct. That it should be one of the first things that every parent sees so that they know what their rights were. Did they do it? No. They did not even adopt a policy for the Code of Conduct until October, even though DeSantis had signed it into law on July 1st. So we knew what we were up against. So we created a letter. And it was an opt-out letter. And we informed the parents about all of the laws that DeSantis had passed. And in this opt-out letter, which was going to be sent to the superintendent, it basically said, you may not talk to my child about morality. You may not talk to my child about gender identification. You may not teach critical race theory to my child. You may not ask my child if they've been vaccinated. And I fully expect that my child will not be on a team where a boy is participating if my child is a daughter. And we went to parks and pools and malls, and we gave the letter out to parents. It went out through my newsletter. It went out through other people's grassroots organizations. So that was one of the things that we did to stop what was going on in the schools. I'm just trying to give you a few examples of the things that I've been involved in since then. The list is really endless. While we were attending the school board meetings, there was one particular, there are 7 school board members, but there are 5 districts, just so that you know. And then 2 people run at large. I'm running at large. That means everybody in Lee County can vote. So when we were attending the school board meetings, we kept hearing the school board member that represented East Lee, and she's a black woman, and we kept hearing her say, "Can you please give me proof that this school in Estero, this K-8 school, should be built?" How many people heard about that? That K-8 school in Estero that was scheduled to be built was going to be a brand new school. Okay, so, and that's something that, you don't just build a school overnight. They had started this process many years ago. And at every single board meeting, we were hearing her ask about that. And not one board member that was on the board said, "Can you please give her the numbers that she's asking for so that we can prove that this school needs to be built?" And that sends up a red flag to all of us. Well, in the district that I had been working in for the 2 districts I had been working in for 8 years, it was part of my responsibility to collect this particular type of data every year. It's required by state and federal law in every state in the United States. And you track the demographics of students, you track their achievement scores, you track their incident rates. An incident is anything from I call you a name to I murder you, that's an incident. And then I remembered that you also had to track the actual numbers of kids that are attending the schools. So I pulled out all of that information, this is just, it's there, you just have to know where to find it. And I compared the schools in Estero with the schools in East Lee, and I also compared the presentation that the business official was giving to prove that this building was warranted, and she was using projected numbers when there were actuals available. And the projected numbers were, guess what? Higher than the actuals. So she was literally basically saying that there were hundreds more kids attending these 3 schools in Estero, which warranted the building, when the actuals proved otherwise. So then, of course, when we looked at the ethnicities of the children in East Lee, and we looked at the ethnicities of the children in Estero, Estero is predominantly white. And then after that, you've got almost probably about 47% Hispanic and 3% black. But in East Lee, you had 50% Hispanic, 25% black, and 25% white. And what happened? Estero schools, great achievement scores. East Lee, not good achievement scores. Estero, no incident rates or minor incident rates. Smoking, is an infraction. But in East Lee, incident rates that were much more serious, off the charts. And I should say one other thing. When school districts grow, and Lee County School District is growing, they use portables. Those trailers that you'll see, 75% of the trailers, which is approximately 130 trailers, are in East Lee, and they've been there for 25 years. So you know what? I'm an educator. First and foremost, I'm an educator, and every child deserves a free and appropriate education. So after putting all of this information together, and it was a stack full, we were trying to get them to halt the building in Estero, and they refused to do it. So we sent a letter to the Office of Civil Rights. And in 2 weeks, they halted that building.
Amen.
$100 million. Our tax dollars. Our tax dollars, right? Whether you have children in this school district or not, they already wasted $12 million on the purchase of land, on the planning, the architects, on the steel that they purchased. So already $12 million, like it's nothing. Okay, let me see. Let me not get too lost here. So I wanted to give you some examples of some of the things that I've been doing. And then I want to open it up to questions and answers. Oh, and I also have something else, so if I go a little out of order. Oh, so what's happening lately? Let me tell you about this. So lately, so we form groups, and lately there's a group of us, and we're working on getting particular novels out of the school libraries. Novels that contain very graphic illustrations and very graphic words. Books like 50 Shades of Grey. okay? And then these, which I'll pass around. This one, well, let me just say this. For those of you who will find this offensive, you may find it offensive. So I will pass it around, but I would just want to forewarn you. This is one book called It's Perfectly Normal, and we did manage to get this book pulled out of the library. And then we found out that It's Not the Stork in the library. And It's Not the Stork is for 4-year-olds and up. It's Perfectly Normal is for 10 years old and up. Wait till you see this. It just doesn't make any sense. But I'll start one in this direction and start. And then there's another one that's called It's So Amazing. And that one is for 7 years old and up. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sure. So that's one of the initiatives that we're working on now. And at the last board meeting, what we did was we took excerpts from every single book, and we went up there and read the excerpts aloud. And after the first few minutes, the board was like, excuse me, you can't use these words in here. Really? When we persisted, they finally took a 5-minute break, and then they came out because all of the board meetings are live streamed and then can be found on YouTube. So when they came back, they caved because they said anybody that has children at home, we're telling you now you can turn off the television, but we're letting you know. So basically, they're warning now parents to turn off the television when the kids can find these books in the libraries. So these are some of the things that we're working on. All right. So I'm not running unopposed, and it's a very sensitive issue when you're trying to decide whether you talk about that or you don't talk about it. But I do think that it's important to at least say this much about my opponent. She is a conservative. She is a Christian. She's been to one board meeting all year. One. And that was an action meeting. And she was quoted the other day as saying, "I don't see why I need to go to the board meetings. They don't listen to us anyway." Well, that's true. But if we weren't going to the board meeting, if I hadn't been going to the board meetings, we wouldn't have stopped the page from getting into the code of conduct. We wouldn't have halted the $100 million building. We wouldn't be putting them in a position where they're now going to have to examine the novels that are in the libraries. So that's not true. We all have a civic responsibility, whatever that is, our civic responsibility, that when something isn't right, we need to do something about it. So this is my wheelhouse, right? I mean, I did not serve in the military. I come from a very military family, and I thank them all. I'm very proud of them. I didn't serve, but this is how I'm serving. This is my service to our country, to our posterity, because in the end, it's not about me. It's not even about our adult children any longer. It's about their children and the children's children, and it's about our country.
Amen.
So, thank you. Amen. So, yes. So, I'm just letting you know, so you should be aware that if you are, by all means, always listen to what everybody else has to say and make up your own mind. But the thing that I can tell you is, she was a 4-year classroom teacher followed by a phys ed teacher, and I was an assistant superintendent of schools. And I humbly say to you that, I don't know if any of you know this or not, but the school district just recently hired a superintendent. Well, both of the people that were finalists were assistant superintendents. So for all intents and purposes, I have their credentials. And people have said to me, "Why don't you apply to be superintendent?" I don't want to be superintendent.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. This is not a money thing for me, because if it was, I wouldn't be out of my house for a year already, 9 or 12 hours a day. I want control over board policy. That's where you affect change, is by creating policy that they have to adhere to. You would not be waiting 4 months for that Bill of Rights policy to be put into their policies if I was on that board. You would not have I would be asking for a committee with regard to those books. They want us to fill out a form to object to every one of those books. I'm sorry, it's incumbent upon them to form a committee to look at those books. Not incumbent upon me as a citizen to force every book out of the library. So, because I know school boards, I can hit the ground running. And I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it for, it's just my heart. Adele will tell you, because, you know, she was such a supporter. I would go back and report at the ERC meetings every month and let everybody know what was going on. So I want to get to question and answer in just a second. But what I want to say to you is just a couple last things. I can't be shy. I have to tell you that this school board race costs money. Mailers are the most expensive part of it, yard signs. And at this point, every candidate needs everything, and I'm no different. I need meet and greets. If people have businesses and they want to put something up in their window, if you'd like to donate to the campaign, if you think you like what you're hearing today, the website is on the information that is on your tables. There's also a QR code there. If it's okay with you, may I take your emails, because I send out campaign newsletters and I let people know what's going on with the campaign. If that's not, please tell Natalie or Betty, or some singling out the women here, or Marty, and they can take your name off the list. I also have stacks of palm cards. Some people have been handing them out. If you want them for your neighbors so that you can hand them out and say this is a person that you should vote for, you can have them. I have them with me today. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that I needed to say, and I don't think so. So what I wanted to do was really open it up for questions from you, what you might want to know.
There. What about vouchers as a means of funding education?
That actually brings up a really good topic. So let me tell you something. I'm going to answer that question in just a second, but I also want to tell you that there's something in Florida called the Hope Scholarship. Anybody hear of the Hope Scholarship? Yeah. Okay, so this is what the Hope Scholarship is. Your child is in the public school setting, and as a